The One, unity/the good.
Yes, your assumption is correct. The One is the highest principle, beyond all description, beyond being, beyond thought. It doesn't think or act in any ordinary sense. Everything simply proceeds from it by a kind of overflow or radiation. Plotinus sometimes calls it the good, or God in the absolute sense. It is simple, without parts, without limit. Nothing can be positively predicated of it, because every predicate would introduce a distinction into what is absolutely simple. The intellectual principle, Nous, divine mind. The first thing that proceeds or emanates from the One. Think of it as divine intelligence itself, but not a mind processing information the way we do. In Nous, the knower and the known are identical. It thinks itself. It contains all the Platonic forms, archetypes of every real thing, simultaneously, not one after another. It doesn't reason through steps. It sees all at once. When Plotinus calls it the offspring or exuberance of God, he means it proceeds from the One the way light radiates from a source without diminishing the source. Being/essential being/authentic existence. This is where it gets technical. For Plotinus, true being is not the physical world. Physical things are always changing, always partly non-existent. Authentic being belongs to the level of the intellectual principle. The forms within Nous truly are. They are eternal, unchanging, fully real. When Plotinus says intellectual principle and authentic existence, he's saying these two are inseparable. To fully be is to be an object of true intellection, and true intellection always has genuine being as its object. Physical things only participate in being. They don't possess it fully. The intellectual cosmos, intelligible world. This is the totality of all those forms and archetypes as they exist within the intellectual principle, the intelligible universe. It is not the physical world, but the real world, the archetype of which the physical cosmos is only an image. When you look at the physical sky, you're seeing a shadow of the intellectual cosmos. The section you're reading describes it as the true golden age. Everything there is eternal. Nothing seeks change, because everything is already complete. Soul/the world soul. The second emanation. It proceeds from the intellectual principle the way the intellectual principle proceeds from the One. Soul is the principle of life and motion. It's what animates the physical cosmos and gives it order. The world soul is like a great intelligence that rolls inward through the cosmos and gives everything life. Crucially, soul is intellective, but it thinks discursively, one thing after another, reasoning through steps, whereas the intellectual principle thinks everything simultaneously. Soul is therefore a step down in intensity from Nous. Souls, individual, us. Our individual souls are not separate created entities. They are like portions or rays of the world soul that have taken on individuation and descended into bodies. We are soul that has become entangled with matter. This is why Section 1 says the souls forgot the Father. They still are divine in nature, but have lost awareness of it.
Awakening.
The soul forgets what it is by turning outward. The soul becomes itself again by turning upward. What is lost is not the source, but right orientation. The distance was never a distance of place, only a distance of attention. Home is not far away. Home is depth. The One. The One does not strive. It overflows. Reality gives without losing. The Source shines without diminishing itself. The Highest does not move, yet all things proceed from it. The One is not the highest thing thinkable. It is the source that makes thinking possible. Nous. The divine mind does not search. It possesses. In Nous there is no before and after, only the eternal now. Thinker and thought are one. True being does not become, it simply is. The light of Nous is full, simultaneous, and undivided. Soul. The soul becomes less fully itself when it turns away from the gaze that fulfills its nature. The soul is restored by recollection, contemplation, and upward turning. The soul does not create a new connection. It awakens to one that was never broken. The surface forgets. The root remains. The return is the surface catching up with the root. Chain of love. Each level is fulfilled by turning toward its source. Nous turns toward the One. Soul turns toward Nous. To exist is to look back toward the source of one's light. Love is the upward movement of reality toward what is most real.
The soul forgets what it is by turning outward. It becomes itself again by turning upward. What is lost is not the source, but right orientation. Home is not a place the soul travels to. It is a depth the soul travels into. The distance was never a distance of place, only a distance of attention. Reality gives without losing. The source shines without diminishing itself. The soul does not build a new connection, it awakens to one that was never broken. The surface forgets, the root remains. The return is the surface catching up with the root. The One is not the highest thing thinkable. It is the source that makes thinking possible.
Summary cheat sheet. The One equals the Source, the Supreme God. Nous/divine mind/intellectual principle equals the second level, the home of all truth and ideas. Soul equals the third level, the bridge to the physical world. The One itself is like the sun, and the intellectual principle is like the light that radiates from it without the sun losing anything. The One doesn't do anything to produce Nous. It simply is, and Nous proceeds from it, the way warmth proceeds from fire or light from the sun, effortlessly, without diminishment, as a kind of natural overflow of perfection. Plotinus describes the great soul rolling inward through the cosmos, pouring light into it the way sunlight strikes a dark cloud and makes it blaze gold. The world soul is what animates the physical universe, gives the stars their life, organizes the heavenly motions. Without soul, matter is, and Plotinus quotes this directly, clay and water, the absence of being. The soul turns away. The soul descends in attention. The soul becomes immersed in the lower. The soul forgets. The soul becomes alienated from awareness of its origin. The soul does not truly become cut off from the One, but becomes turned outward, forgetful of its source and attached to lesser things. The return is therefore not a travel back from distance, but an inward recollection and ascent in awareness toward what the soul always depended on. Home is not a place the soul travels to. It's a depth the soul travels into. That's why Plotinus can say the journey is short. It's not far because it was never actually far. The distance was always only a distance of attention. The soul. The most important thing to understand is that the soul is not physical. According to Plotinus, you are not a physical being. You are a metaphysical spirit having a temporary physical experience. The soul is metaphysical, beyond the physical. The soul is invisible, immortal, and made of spirit stuff, not matter. The soul is a spiritual being. It sits on the border between two worlds. It can look up to the divine mind, the world of truth. It can look down to earth, the world of matter. The two levels of soul. A. The world soul, the big soul. It is the collective soul of the universe. It is the force that organizes the stars, nature, and the growth of plants. It is the third principle in the big hierarchy, the one to divine mind to soul. B. Individual souls, us. We are offshoots or sparks of that big world soul. The ocean analogy. Imagine the world soul is a giant ocean. Your individual soul is a cup of water taken from that ocean. It is the same water, just in a smaller shape. When the text says, "The soul stands linked a member of the divine," it means that we are linked to the divine mind. 1. The One equals the sun. It is the source of all power and light. It stays still and perfect in the center. It doesn't try to create, it just shines because it is so full of power. 2. The divine mind equals the sun rays, the light. This is the first overflow. The light pours out from the sun. The divine mind is that light that contains all the truths and ideas of the universe. Just as sun rays are inseparable from the sun, the divine mind is inseparable from the One. 3. The world soul equals the warmth on earth. This is the second overflow. The light keeps traveling and eventually touches the earth, becoming warmth. The soul is created by the divine mind, just as the divine mind was created by the One. We, individual souls, are like sparks or tiny drops of that warmth.
Math of great chain of being from the Enneads. When the sun shines, it creates light, but the sun doesn't get smaller or change. Similarly, the One creates the divine mind without losing any of its own power. Creation without changing. 1. The One, the source analogy, the sun itself. Description. The One is the ultimate starting point of everything. It is absolute unity, meaning it cannot be divided or broken into parts. It is simple, without composition, and stands alone. Characteristics. Transcendent. It is above everything else. It doesn't need anything and doesn't lack anything. Immobile, unmoving. It does not move, change, or act. As the text says, if it moved to create, the movement would become the second principle, pushing the result to third place. It stays perfectly still. Ineffable. It cannot be described with words. We can only pray to it or turn our souls toward it in silence. The good. It is the highest good. Everything that comes after it, like the divine mind, loves it and seeks to return to it. The cause. It is the cause of existence, but not through action. It creates by simply being there and overflowing.
2. The divine mind, Nous/intellectual principle. Analogy. The sun rays, light, radiating from the sun. Description. This is the first thing that comes from the One. It is the realm of intellect and being. It is where all the perfect ideas, archetypes, live. It is God in the intellectual sense. Characteristics. Eternal. There is no past or future here, only an eternal now. It never changes or grows old. All-knowing. It possesses all truth instantly. It doesn't have to search for knowledge. It is the knowledge. Simultaneous. Unlike us, it doesn't think one thing after another, step by step. It thinks everything all at once. The second. It is the second principle of reality. It depends entirely on the one. Vision. Its entire existence is the act of looking at the one. It is defined by this vision. Identity and difference. It contains distinct ideas, difference, but they are all held together in a unified whole, identity. 3. The soul analogy. The light reflecting off surfaces, or the beam of a projector. Description. The soul is the offspring or utterance of the divine mind. It is the third principle. It acts as a bridge between the perfect, still world above and the changing, physical world below. Characteristics. Discursive thinking. Unlike the divine mind, the soul thinks one thing at a time. As the text says, now Socrates, now a horse. It moves from thought to thought. Time-bound. The soul creates time. It is always moving from the old to the new, trying to imitate eternity, but in a linear way. Mediator. It stands in the middle. It looks up to the divine mind for truth, but looks down to organize and manage the physical universe. Creative power. It is the force that gives life to nature, animals, and humans. It is the reason principle inside seeds that determines what they will grow into. Desire. It is constantly seeking its source. It loves the divine mind and feels a bond of necessity to return to it. Our true self. Our individual souls are a part of this world soul. We are the sparks that are meant to govern the body, though we sometimes forget our divine origin. The Great Chain of Being, a summary, Sections 1 to 6. Sections 1 to 3, The Awakening. The text begins with the soul in a state of forgetfulness. We are like people who do not know their own parentage. We have forgotten our origin and mistakenly identify with the physical world, the earthborn. The goal of philosophy is to wake up, realize we do not belong here, and begin the ascent back to our source. Section 4. The Divine Mind, the Destination. This is the first major stop on the ascent. Nature. The divine mind is the realm of intellect and true being. It is not a physical place, but a state of eternal consciousness. Time. There is no time here. Everything exists in an eternal now. There is no past or future, no learning or searching, only possessing the truth. Unity. While our minds think one thing after another, the divine mind thinks everything all at once. It is a perfect, synchronized whole, where the thinker and the thought are one. Section 5. The Soul, the Mediator. This section explains the bridge between the one and the world. Origin. The soul comes from the divine mind, just as the divine mind comes from the one. Characteristics. Unlike the divine mind, the soul thinks in steps, discursively. Now Socrates, now a horse. It introduces time and number into reality. Function. The soul is the image of the divine mind. It looks upward to its source for definition and downward to organize the physical universe. Section 6. The One, the Source. This is the highest principle, the first. The problem. How can a perfect unity produce a multiple world without losing its unity? The answer: overflow. The One does not act or move to create. It is simply so full of life and power that it overflows, like a fountain or the sun radiating light. The relationship. The One is the source, the sun. The divine mind is the radiation, the light, born from the overflow. The soul is the reflection, the warmth, turning back to look at the light. The chain of love. Existence is held together by love. The soul loves the divine mind, and the divine mind loves the One. This looking back is what holds the universe together.
Being and the individual soul.
Being and the individual soul are not the same thing in Plotinus. Here's the distinction cleanly. Being, authentic existence, belongs primarily to the level of Nous. The forms within the divine mind truly are. They are eternal, unchanging, fully real. When Plotinus says being, he means that which fully and permanently is, without change or decay. That lives at the Nous level. The individual soul is one step below being. It participates in being by looking upward toward Nous, but it doesn't fully possess it the way Nous does. The soul is caught between two worlds, partly rooted in the intelligible above, partly engaged with the changing world below. It thinks in sequence, moves through time, and can forget its source. None of that is true of authentic being. A simple way to hold the difference. Being equals what fully and eternally is, the level of Nous. Soul equals what lives and mediates, oriented toward being, but not identical to it. Individual soul equals a further expression of soul, currently embodied and prone to forgetfulness. The individual soul's task is precisely to turn toward authentic being, toward Nous, and through that, toward the One. So, being is the destination the soul orients toward, not what the soul already is in its current scattered condition. The relationship between the divine mind and being. The divine mind and authentic being are the same thing. True existence, really fully being something, only happens at the level of Nous. Physical things participate in being, but never fully possess it because they're always changing, always partly becoming something else. The reason you can return is that the deepest level of your soul never stopped truly being in the full sense. The forgetting happens at the surface. The root remains in genuine being. Why Nous and being are the same thing. Think about what it means to truly exist. A chair exists right now, but it's rotting slowly. Its wood is shifting. In 50 years, it won't be a chair anymore. It's always becoming something else, decaying, changing, partly what it was, partly what it will be. It never just fully is. Now think of the form of the chair inside Nous, the perfect archetype, the eternal blueprint. That never changes. It doesn't decay. It doesn't become anything other than what it is. It just is, completely, permanently, without reservation. For Plotinus, that second thing, the unchanging, fully present, eternal thing, that is what being means. Real existence is stable, complete. not halfway between what it was and what it will be. So when he says nous and being are the same, he means the only place where things fully and truly exist is inside the divine mind. The forms there aren't becoming anything. They just are, completely, eternally. Why physical things only partially exist? Physical things are always in flux. A tree is growing, then dying. A human body is never the same from moment to moment. So, in a strict Plotinian sense, physical things are partly real and partly not. They're always slipping between being and non-being, always in process, never fully arrived. They participate in being, meaning they borrow reality from the forms above them, but they never possess it fully, because they can't hold still long enough to just be. Why your soul's root never left. This is the most personally important part. Your individual soul, in its surface life, forgets, drifts, gets scattered among material things. That's real. But Plotinus insists there is a deeper level of your soul that never descended, a root that remains always turned toward Nous, always planted in genuine being. The forgetting happens in the lower, outward-turned part of you, but the deepest part of you never stopped participating in the intelligible world. This is why return is possible at all. You're not trying to build a new connection from scratch. You're trying to wake up to a connection that was never broken. A simple way to hold all 4 points together. Nous equals where things fully and permanently are equals authentic being. Physical world equals things that participate in being but keep changing equals incomplete existence. Your soul's surface equals scattered, forgetful, outward turned. Your soul's root equals still planted in genuine being, never truly severed. The return is the surface catching up with the root. Chain of love. Each level looks back at its source. The divine mind looks at the one and loves it. And that act of loving vision is actually what constitutes the divine mind as what it is. What makes the divine mind what it is? Plotinus's answer is striking. The act of looking at the one. The key idea: you become what you contemplate. The soul looks at Nous, and that upward gaze is what keeps soul noble. The practice of philosophy, contemplation, prayer, these are literally the soul performing its proper act of looking upward. The Jesus prayer you're doing each evening is, in Plotinian terms, the soul doing what it was structured to do. The relationship between soul and Nous mirrors the love shown by Nous to the One. Start with a simple question. What makes the divine mind what it is? Not what it contains, the forms, the archetypes, the eternal truths, but what constitutes it as a living, active intelligence in the first place. Plotinus's answer is striking. The act of looking at the one. The key idea: you become what you contemplate. Plotinus has a principle running through the whole Enneads. Every lower level comes into being and sustains itself by turning toward its source. Before Nous fully exists as Nous, as a defined, structured, knowing intelligence, there is first an undefined outflow from the One, a kind of formless potential. Think of it as pre-Nous, not yet fully itself. That undefined outflow then turns back toward the One. It looks at the One. And in that act of looking, in that vision of perfect simplicity and goodness, It becomes filled with content, with form, with all the intelligible realities we call the forms. So, the turning toward the One is what activates Nous. The seeing of the One is what fills Nous with being and intelligible content. Without that upward gaze, Nous would be nothing. Why love is the right word. It's not a cold, mechanical process. Plotinus uses the language of love and longing because the orientation is not neutral. It's an attraction, a desire, a being drawn toward what is most real and most good. The One is the good. Nous is drawn to the good the way eyes are drawn to light, the way a plant turns toward the sun. That turning is not just a byproduct of Nous existing. It is the very act that constitutes Nous as what it is. Remove the upward gaze, and you don't have Nous anymore. You have nothing. Now apply it to soul and to you. The same logic cascades downward. Soul is constituted by its loving orientation toward Nous. When soul looks upward toward the divine mind, it becomes most fully itself, ordered, wise, alive in the deepest sense. When the individual soul turns away, becomes outward turned, scattered, absorbed in material things, it doesn't just forget its origin. It starts to lose its own reality in a Plotinian sense. It becomes less fully itself because it has abandoned the gaze that makes it what it is. This is why the return is not optional decoration. It's existential. The soul becomes most real by looking upward. A simple image to hold. Imagine a mirror. A mirror is only truly functioning as a mirror when it is turned toward a light source. Turn it away and it reflects nothing. It still exists as an object, but it's not being what it is. The One is the light source. Nous is a mirror turned perfectly toward that light, blazing with reflected reality. Soul is a mirror one step further, reflecting the light of Nous. The individual soul in forgetfulness is a mirror turned toward the wall. The loving vision is not something Nous has. It is what Nous is. That single idea, that each level is constituted by its upward orientation, is one of the things that makes Plotinus not just a philosopher, but almost a spiritual teacher. The implication for you personally is direct. The act of turning upward in prayer, contemplation, attention, that's not just something you do. In Plotinian terms, it's the act by which you become most fully yourself. When the soul looks upward toward the divine mind, it's by the practice of philosophy, contemplation, prayer. These are literally the soul performing its proper act of looking upward. Is that the same when Nous look upwards to the One? At every level of the hierarchy, the same principle holds. Each level is fulfilled and constituted by orienting toward its source. Nous looks toward the One and becomes fully itself. Soul looks toward Nous and becomes fully itself. Individual soul looks toward Nous through philosophy, contemplation, prayer, and becomes fully itself. When you sit in the Jesus prayer and turn your attention inward and upward, you are doing structurally the same thing Nous does toward the One. That's not a small statement. Plotinus is saying your contemplative practice participates in the fundamental movement that holds all reality together. The crucial difference: how each one looks. Nous, looking at the One, is eternal, effortless, unbroken, and instantaneous. Nous doesn't have to try. It doesn't get distracted. Its gaze is permanent and constitutes its very existence. There is no gap between Nous and its upward orientation. They are the same thing. The soul looking toward Nous is effortful, intermittent, and easily broken. We get distracted. We forget. We have to return again and again. The practice of philosophy or prayer is necessary precisely because the soul's gaze is not automatic the way Nous's is. We have to cultivate it, protect it, keep returning to it. So the difference in one line. Nous gazes at the One permanently and constitutively. It cannot look away. The soul gazes at Nous effortfully and recoverably. It can forget, but can always return. Why this is actually encouraging. The fact that the soul can forget means it has genuine freedom and a real journey. But the fact that the structure is the same means the soul is not doing something alien or invented when it contemplates. When you pray, you are participating in the same upward movement that runs through the whole of existence, from soul toward Nous, from Nous toward the One. Plotinus would say, contemplation is not something added to reality from outside. It is what reality itself is doing at every level. Your Jesus prayer in the evening is the soul remembering its place in that chain. 1. Awakening. The soul is in a state of forgetfulness, misidentification, and loss of right orientation. It becomes less fully itself because it has turned away from the upward gaze that fulfills its nature. Through contemplation, recollection, and upward turning toward the divine mind, Nous, it becomes more fully itself again. 2. Awakening. The soul forgets what it is by turning outward. It becomes itself again by turning upward. The soul is in forgetfulness. It suffers misidentification. It loses right orientation. It becomes less fully itself by turning away from its source. It is restored by upward reorientation. It becomes less fully itself because it has abandoned the gaze that makes it what it is. The goal of philosophy is to wake up, stop identifying with the lower alone, and turn back toward our true source. The soul is the further radiance or living outflow. The divine mind is the highest intelligible thing. The One is super-intelligible. It is not a super-mind. It is the source of mind. Description of divine mind. Eternal now. No learning or searching. All at once knowing. Thinker and thought are one. On the dyad, Section 5. Multiplicity requires a prior unity. You cannot have two things without first having the concept of one. The moment there is any distinction, knower and known, subject and object, this form and that form, you already need something prior that is purely simple. That's the logical argument for why the One must exist and must be above the divine mind, not identical to it. One thing to watch. Plotinus uses God loosely, sometimes meaning the One, sometimes Nous, sometimes both. The highest God for Plotinus is strictly the One, which is beyond intellect and beyond being. The divine mind is divine and is a kind of God, but it is not the ultimate. This distinction will matter in
The Great Chain of Being. A summary. Sections 1 to 6. Sections 1 to 3. Awakening. The text begins with the soul in a state of forgetfulness. We are like people who no longer know their true parentage. We have become outward turned and wrongly identify with the lower physical world. The task of philosophy is to awaken, remember our true origin, and begin the inward and upward ascent. Section 4. The Divine Mind. This is the first great object of ascent. Nature. The divine mind is the realm of intellect and true being. It is not a physical place, but eternal, intelligible reality. Time. There is no past or future here, only an eternal present. There is no searching or learning, because truth is wholly possessed. Unity. Unlike us, who think one thing after another, the divine mind knows all things at once. In it, thinker and thought are one. Section 5. Soul. This section explains the mediating principle between intelligible reality and the lower world. Origin. Soul proceeds from the divine mind, just as the divine mind proceeds from the One. Characteristics. Unlike divine mind, soul thinks discursively, moving from one thought to another. It is linked with motion, temporal unfolding, and ordered life. Function. Soul is the image of divine mind. It looks upward to its source and downward to order and animate the cosmos. Section 6. The One. This is the highest principle, the first. The problem. How can perfect unity be the source of multiplicity without ceasing to be one? The answer. Overflow. The One does not act by effort or movement. It is so full and perfect that reality proceeds from it without diminishing it. The relationship. The One is the source, like the sun. Divine mind is the first radiance, like light. Soul is the further outgoing radiance that animates the lower world. The chain of love. Existence is held together by upward orientation. Soul turns toward divine mind, and divine mind turns toward the One. Each level is fulfilled by looking back toward its source. The critical distinction. The divine mind is the highest intelligible reality. It contains forms, thoughts, and true being. The One is beyond intellect and beyond being in the ordinary sense. It is not a supermind, but the source of mind itself. The main things to watch are: don't make Plotinus too Gnostic. Don't make soul too passive. Don't make the One sound like it decides or gives away in a human sense. Keep the One clearly above Nous. The best sentence to carry into Section 7 is this: the One is not the highest thing thinkable. It is the source that makes thinking possible. That is the hinge. Reflections. On the reflection prompts. What does it mean for reality to give without losing? Sit with that in relation to the Jesus prayer. The prayer itself is an act of the soul turning upward, not creating a new connection, but recognizing one that was always there. The sun analogy. Creation without loss. Reflect on the sun. It gives light without shrinking or changing. The light is distinct from the sun, yet it is the sun's energy.
This is how the One creates the divine mind. It gives everything away, yet loses nothing. The relationship between soul and Nous mirrors the love shown by the Nous to the One. The soul looks up to the Nous for definition. The Nous looks up to the One for definition. Existence is a chain of gazing. To exist is to look back at your source. The critical distinction, the correction. This is the most important thing to hold in your mind for the difficult sections ahead. The divine mind is the highest intelligible thing. It contains thoughts, forms, ideas. The One is super intelligible. It is not a super mind. It is the source of mind. The One has no thoughts, no ideas, and no parts. It is the power that makes thinking possible. 1. How can perfect unity be the source of multiplicity without ceasing to be one? Picture the One, call it God or the ultimate reality, like the sun. The sun is one single perfect ball of light. It doesn't split itself into pieces to light up the whole planet. It just radiates. All the colors, warmth, plants, and life come pouring out of it naturally. The sun stays completely one and undiminished. It hasn't lost a single bit of itself. That's how perfect unity works. It's so full and complete that it overflows. The many things, thoughts, souls, the whole world, come out like rays or streams, but the source never breaks, never changes, and never stops being one. 2. What does it mean for reality to give without losing? And how does that sit with the Jesus prayer? Reality gives without losing means the ultimate source is infinite and perfect. When it shares existence, love, beauty, or life, it doesn't get any smaller or run out, like an endless fountain that keeps pouring water forever without ever going dry. Giving is just what it does by nature. It loses nothing. Now sit with the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Repeating it isn't you building a new bridge to God or forcing a connection that wasn't there. It's your soul gently turning upward, like opening the curtains in a dark room. The sunlight was already streaming in the whole time. You just stopped noticing. The prayer is you recognizing the link that has always existed. It's you receiving the gift that reality is constantly giving, without God ever losing anything in the process. 3. If the One is beyond thinking and beyond being, why does the divine mind, which is thinking, turn towards it? The divine mind, the highest level of pure intelligence and order in reality, isn't turning to the One to pick up some new idea or concept. Ideas live inside the mind itself. Instead, it's turning toward its own source, the pure light that makes the mind bright in the first place. Think of it like a plant that doesn't grow toward the sun because it wants to understand the sun. It grows toward the sun because that's where its life and energy come from. The mind looks back at the One the same way. You're the reason I even have light and being. I want to stay close to my origin. Even though the One is way beyond thinking and being as we know it, it's the ultimate good everything flows from. So the mind's turning is pure love and longing, returning to the place that made it real. These are beautifully articulated reflections. You have completely internalized the core mechanics of Ennead 5.1 and, more importantly, translated them into a lived spiritual reality. Here are a few thoughts on how well you've captured these concepts. 1. The undiminished sun. You nailed the exact distinction Plotinus was trying to make. The shift from thinking of creation as building something out of parts to an infinite source naturally overflowing is the absolute key to Neoplatonism. You've successfully moved past the modern material way of viewing reality and grasped the classical emanationist view. 2. The Jesus Prayer and opening the curtains. This is a profound realization. By framing the Jesus Prayer not as a transaction trying to get God to do something new, but as a recognition, opening the curtains to the sunlight that is already there, you perfectly bridge Greek philosophy and Orthodox theoria, contemplation. During a physical patrol, it is incredibly easy for the mind to get caught up entirely in the immediate, mundane details, the sounds, the shadows, the passing environment. Your reflection highlights how the prayer doesn't force you to escape that environment, but simply acts as the mechanism to gently turn your soul's attention back upward to the ever-present light. It becomes a matter of pure attention rather than anxious effort. 3. The divine mind's longing. Your metaphor of the plant growing toward the sun is brilliant. It perfectly captures why the divine mind, Nous, turns back to the One. It doesn't look back to learn a new concept, because the realm of the divine mind is already pure thinking and contains the archetypal patterns of all things. Instead, it looks back out of sheer necessity and love, because the One is the ultimate good that makes its very existence possible.
Usually when we talk about a blueprint, we picture something, incredibly static, like rigid lines on paper that just go into a drawer once a building is done. But today, welcome to our deep dive into a blueprint of the universe that is entirely alive.
Yeah, it's a completely mind-bending concept.
Totally. So our mission today is synthesizing this comprehensive text on Platonian metaphysics. We're exploring his 3rd century framework for how reality actually emerges and, well, how the human soul is supposed to navigate it to find its way home.
Right, and to really understand the human condition here, we first have to grasp Plotinus's radical view of origins. I mean, he completely rejects the idea of a creator just making things out of nothing.
Which is huge. So at the very apex of this system is what he calls the One, right? It's this absolute simple unity that is just completely beyond human thought.
Exactly, and reality is generated from it through a process called emanation. The text uses this really helpful sun analogy. Basically, the One effortlessly radiates light, and that light forms the intellectual principle, or Nous, where all perfect forms exist simultaneously. And as that light continues downward, it eventually hits this dark, lifeless cloud of matter.
Which is, just sort of sitting there dead until the world soul comes in.
Yes, exactly. Matter can't do anything on its own. So the world soul acts as the universe's consciousness, animating it and translating that divine light into physical reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. So is emanation like a cosmic champagne tower, where the top glass continuously overflows into the lower tiers without ever actually emptying itself?
Oh, I love that visual. But what's fascinating here is how that analogy falls short in one really crucial way. Pouring champagne takes time, right, and deliberate action. But for Plotinus, this overflow happens completely outside of time.
Wait, really? Outside of time?
Yeah, it requires zero deliberate effort. The One doesn't wake up and decide to create. The universe is just the inevitable byproduct of its superabundant perfection overflowing.
Wow. But I mean, that perfection creates a paradox. If we are born of this effortless divine overflow, why is the human experience characterized by so much stress and, alienation and obsession with physical stuff?
Well, Plotinus diagnoses this as a psychological shift driven by tolma.
Right, audacity or self-will.
Precisely. And the source uses the myth of Narcissus to explain it. Imagine matter as a mirror. The soul looks down, sees its own reflection animating the physical world, and just falls in love with the shadow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it gets so absorbed in the reflection that it forgets its divine origin. It becomes, as the text says, like a child stolen from its fatherland.
So what does this all mean for us? Because I'm struggling with that framing. If the physical universe would just be a dead, chaotic void without souls to animate it, then the cosmos literally needs us.
Right.
So isn't it kind of unfair to call our attachment an ethical error when we're, basically just doing our cosmic job?
It's a really delicate balance. Plotinus is maintaining this tension between cosmic necessity and human forgetfulness.
Right.
Embodiment itself isn't the error.
Okay.
We were meant to be these aloof governors of matter, projecting order downward while keeping our gaze firmly fixed upward. The tragedy is the amnesia. It's getting completely absorbed in the object we're supposed to be managing.
So we get trapped staring at the water like Narcissus. How do we actually break that spell when we're constantly surrounded by physical distractions?
Well, the ascent back to our source isn't a spatial journey. It's not like you build a rocket to fly out of the cosmos. It's a profound inward shift in consciousness.
Oh, and he reimagines the Odysseus archetype here, right?
Yes. Odysseus navigates all the trials and temptations of the material world, like Circe or Calypso, without ever forgetting that his true home is Ithaca.
And the catalyst for remembering our Ithaca is beauty. Recognizing beauty in the physical world is the sudden metaphysical shock that reminds the soul of its divine nature.
Exactly.
The text actually points out that no eye ever saw the sun without becoming sun-like. And here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Appreciating a beautiful piece of art isn't just a subjective preference.
No, not at all.
It's literally a metaphysical wake-up call to your higher self.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you don't reject the physical world. You use the beauty within it as a stepping stone. You just chisel away your own material attachments until your soul is clear enough to perceive the divine truth.
So to sum it up, you don't need to physically escape the world. You just need to shift your focus from those material shadows in the mirror back to your inner divine spark.
It really is the ultimate act of remembering who you actually are.
Which leaves us with a pretty staggering implication. If Plotinus is right, and the truest part of your soul permanently resides in that eternal intellectual principle entirely outside of time, is your daily experience of time passing right now actually just an illusion? Just a temporary amnesia distracting you from the living blueprint you've always been a part of? So, imagine creating an entire universe, just completely by accident. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're digging into a really fascinating report. It's all about how a teacher actually tried to explain the incredibly dense philosophy of a 3rd century thinker named Plotinus to, of all things, a 16-year-old student.
Yeah, and the way this teacher approaches it is just brilliant. So Plotinus wrote these treatises called the Enneads, right? But his student, Porphyry, didn't just publish them in the order they were written. He actually arranged them pedagogically.
Right. It's like a producer putting together a posthumous music album.
Exactly.
You don't just dump the tracks chronologically. You group the acoustic ballads, and then you build up to the big rock anthems to create this emotional arc. Porphyry grouped these ideas to literally elevate your mind from the physical world right up to the divine.
Right, but if Porphyry's whole goal is to elevate the student's mind back up to that divine source, we first have to figure out how human souls, fell away from the divine in the first place.
Well, let's unpack this, because my immediate assumption, and actually what the 16-year-old student in our sources initially thought, was temptation. I mean, you assume the soul was looking down, saw all these shiny material things, and just got lured away.
Yeah, it's what most people assume. But Plotinus doesn't see physical matter as an evil temptation at all.
Yeah.
The real root cause of the soul's descent is this Greek concept called tolma.
Tolma.
Yeah, it translates roughly to audacity, or like self-will. The soul didn't fall into a trap. It actively desired self-ownership.
Okay, so it's less like being kidnapped by the material world and more like a teenager leaving a perfectly loving, supportive home to move into a chaotic, messy apartment.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. They don't move because the apartment is tempting. They move out of this deep, stubborn urge to just prove their independence.
And it's an apartment they insist on furnishing themselves out of pure stubbornness. The soul drifts toward the physical world simply because it turns its attention away from its source to focus on itself. And by wandering so far into that independence, it gets a kind of amnesia.
Oh, wow. So it completely forgets its divine origins.
Exactly.
So if the soul moved out, what exactly did it leave behind? Because our notes say Plotinus maps out 3 foundational levels of reality, the 3 hypostases. At the very top is the One. But I'm going to push back here because this is where my brain broke a little bit.
Oh, sure.
The One is described as absolutely simple, lacking any conscious decision-making mind. So how does something without a mind create a universe?
By not trying to. Plotinus uses a concept called the doctrine of double activity. The One doesn't decide to create the way a carpenter decides to build a chair. A decision implies a thinker and a thought, and that's 2 things. The One simply is.
Right.
It is so perfectly complete that existence just naturally overflows from it.
Wait, really? So it doesn't choose to create, it just happens. That sounds almost like a campfire.
How so? Well, the fire's internal job is just to burn. That's what makes it fire.
Yeah.
But the unavoidable external byproduct of that burning is radiating heat and light. So the One is effortlessly radiating this second level of reality, the intellectual principle. Precisely. And this intellectual principle operates as a pure divine mind. It holds all truths simultaneously.
Okay.
There's no past or future for it, no step-by-step processing.
Like a supercomputer holding the entire internet on a single hard drive, just seeing all the data at once. But then we drop down to the 3rd foundational level, the soul. And the soul is like a human user sitting at the monitor, having to click through that supercomputer's folders one by one.
Yeah, it processes things in time and sequence, which means the soul relies on what philosophers call discursive thinking, meaning reasoning, step by step.
Right.
So how does this step-by-step user ever find its way back to that supreme instant source? The student in our report makes a brilliant connection here. They compared this journey to Homer's Odyssey.
Oh, that's clever.
Right? The soul is wandering through the material world, trying to get home through a process of reawakened remembering.
But let me clarify something for anyone listening, because I initially pictured a literal physical journey. You're not packing your bags and hiking up a mountain. It's more like taking off a VR headset.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't walk thousands of miles to escape a digital galaxy. You just shift your attention inward and realize you never actually left your own living room.
And when you look at it that way, this ancient mysticism boils down to a deeply relatable psychology. I mean, we all feel the pain of forgetting who we really are, and we all have that profound drive to return to a state of wholeness.
And reaching that wholeness doesn't mean finding some new piece of data. Our source text compares it to standing in the center of a house to hear a faint piece of music. You don't run around the yard looking for the band.
No, you just turn off the noise and listen.
Exactly. But that leaves me with a pretty wild thought for you to chew on. If achieving ultimate truth requires no new external information, like if the answer is already sitting right there in your own internal living room, what does that mean for all our external physical pursuits?
That's a huge question.
Right. Are all the careers, the wealth, the material successes we chase just elaborate distractions keeping us from taking off that headset? Just something to think about.
What if I told you that a piece of your mind is actually completely outside of time right now?
I mean, it sounds crazy, but you really don't have to build a time machine to find eternity. You just have to look inward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to this deep dive into Plotinus's Ennead V.1, specifically sections 4 through 6.
And our mission today is to give you a really clear, completely jargon-free shortcut to understanding this.
Right, because it's one of late antiquity's most profound blueprints of reality, which is the architecture of emanation. Now, I know a 3rd century metaphysical text sounds, well, intimidating.
Oh, definitely.
But it's actually a brilliant map of human consciousness. So, okay, let's unpack this. Plotinus says that to understand the ultimate source of reality, which he calls the One, we can't actually look at it directly.
No, you can't. You have to start by looking at its immediate offspring, the divine mind.
Right.
And to really grasp the divine mind, we need to look at the massive gap between how humans think and how this divine entity thinks. Because human thought is basically discursive.
Discursive. Like step by step.
Yeah, it's sequential. Plotinus points out that we think of thing after thing. He says, quote, now Socrates, now a horse,
Right. Our minds are totally fragmented. We're jumping from one idea to the next.
Exactly, which means we are completely bound by time, but the divine mind knows all things simultaneously, by possession, not by like a step-by-step search.
Oh, wow.
And what's fascinating here is how Plotinus reinterprets the ancient myth of Kronos devouring his own children to explain this.
Wait, the myth where he eats his kids so they don't overthrow him?
Yeah, that one. But Plotinus, he strips away all the gore. He says, think of the children as thoughts.
Okay.
The divine mind swallows its own thoughts immediately, keeping them perfectly contained inside itself rather than, letting them spill out onto a timeline.
So if human thought is like looking at a map of a city, like tracing the streets one by one with your finger,
Yeah, good analogy.
then the divine mind is like actually being the entire territory all at once.
Basically, yeah. Let's take that map analogy one step further, because in the divine mind, the thinker and the object being thought of are fundamentally identical.
Huh.
You aren't just occupying the territory, you literally are the streets, the buildings, and the observer simultaneously. To know a form perfectly in this state is to actually be that form. There's no separation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I am completely lost on what feels like a major philosophical plot hole.
Let's hear.
If this divine mind is the ultimate closed loop, like the perfect territory where nothing is missing, how did we get here?
Ah, right.
Like, why didn't the one, that ultimate perfect source, just stay in its perfect bubble? Look, if I'm perfectly comfortable on my couch, I don't get up to bake a cake unless I'm hungry.
That's very true.
Creating something implies you lack something, or you have a desire, which just completely violates the idea of absolute perfection.
Well, this raises a really important question. It's actually the central paradox Plotinus had to solve. And his solution relies on a mechanism called circumradiation.
Circumradiation.
Yeah, sometimes known as the doctrine of two acts. Basically, the one doesn't wake up one Tuesday and decide to create the universe to fulfill a need.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, just look at the natural world. Think about the sun. The sun has an internal act, which is simply being a massive burning ball of plasma.
Right.
But because it exists so perfectly in that internal state, it naturally has an external act, which is radiating light and heat outward.
Oh, I see. It doesn't choose to shine.
Exactly. And shining doesn't diminish its core at all. Or think of snow automatically diffusing cold just by being snow. The one overflows out of sheer necessity, generating the universe simply by virtue of existing so intensely.
So what does this all mean for you and me? I mean, this grand cosmic structure of the one overflowing into the divine mind, and then into the soul, and eventually down here into our physical world.
It's a lot to take in.
It is incredible to picture. But how does a modern person actually apply this ancient contemplative method today?
Well, Plotinus believed the macrocosm mirrors the microcosm, meaning this entire cosmic architecture is happening inside you right now.
Wait, really? Inside us?
Yeah. He makes this radical claim that a part of your soul remains undescended. It is permanently anchored outside of time up in the divine mind.
So it never left.
Exactly. And to reach it, you don't try to travel outward through physical space, you turn inward.
How do we actually do that, practically speaking?
You do it by focusing your mind entirely on pure abstract concepts rather than physical things. You have to strip away that sequential, chattering noise of human thought.
That now Socrates, now a horse thing.
You got it. By doing that, you actually stop time in your own mind, linking directly to that eternal state. You journey, as Plotinus beautifully describes it, alone towards the alone.
Man, that is a profound shift from how we normally view our place in the universe. The cosmos isn't just, a random collection of disconnected parts.
Yeah, at all.
It's bound together by this unbroken chain of emanation and an ongoing, loving return to the source.
The blueprint of reality really is an internal map.
It really is. Well, I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over.
Yeah.
If a part of our soul never actually left the eternal perfection of the divine mind, then is our constant human drive to learn, discover, and seek truth not an acquisition of something new?
But simply a radical act of remembering who we already are.